Everyone, and thanks for watching Edupedia World videos. I Vibhuti Parekh is today going to discuss with you the modes of entry in international business part 2. As discussed in our first part that there are several modes of entry in international business. In this discussion we will be discussing regarding assembly operations, joint ventures, third country locations, mergers and acquisitions, and strategic alliances. First and foremost, we will discuss regarding assembly operations. What are the assembly operations? As Miracle and Album pointed out, a manufacturer who wants many of the advantages that are associated with overseas manufacturing facilities and yet does not want to go that far may find it desirable to establish overseas assembly facilities in selected markets. In a sense, the establishment of an assembly operation represents a cross between exporting and overseas manufacturing. Now, this is a sort of entry strategy which is found facilitating in many conditions. Now, what are the ideal conditions for it? Having an assembly facilities in foreign markets is very ideal when there are economies of scale in the manufacture of parts and components, and when assembly operations are labor intensive and labor is cheap in the foreign country. It may be noted that number of US manufacturers they ship parts and components to the developing countries, get the product assembled there and bring it back to home. The US tariff law also encourages this. Thus, even products meant to be marketed domestically are assembled abroad. Assembling the product meant for the foreign market in the foreign market itself has certain other advantages besides the cost advantage. The import duty is normally low on parts and components than on finished goods. Like if you are importing a completely made Ferrari, then the import duty will be much higher as compared to the assembled or the component parts of it. If you are importing just the piston of Ferrari, or you are importing just the steering wheel and different parts in several import assignments, then the import duty will obviously be low. The assembly operations would satisfy the local content demand at least to some extent. Because of the employee generation, the foreign government's attitude will be more favorable than towards the import of the finished goods, because the company who is importing several assembled parts will be giving some employment to the foreign country also. Other advantages is that the investment to be made in the foreign country is very small in comparison with that required for establishing a complete manufacturing facility. The political risk of foreign investment is thus not very high. So here we can say that there is a comparatively lesser risk in investment. This is what was all about assembly operations. There are majorly no negative sides of an assembly operation. So here we have just discussed the facilities in which it is an ideal entry mode to consider an assembly operation. Our next point is joint venture. Now, what is a joint venture? It is a common strategy of entering the foreign market. In the widest sense, any form of association which implies collaboration for more than a transitory period is a joint venture. But we should consider that pure trading are not included in this concept. Such a broad definition encompasses many diverse types of joint venture operations, which are sharing of ownership and management in an enterprise, licensing and franchising agreements, which we have already discussed, contract manufacturing, again this is also a type of joint venture which we have already discussed earlier, and last but not the least is management contracts. These are the four main types of joint ventures. The second, third and fourth are already discussed in our part 1. So in this discussion we will just be discussing the sharing of ownership and management in an enterprise. Now, the essential feature of a joint ownership venture is that the ownership and management are shared between a foreign firm and a local firm. In some cases there are more than two parties involved. The joint ownership venture may be brought about by a foreign investor buying an interest in the local company, a local firm acquiring an interest in an existing foreign firm, or by both the foreign and local entrepreneurs jointly forming a new enterprise. As mentioned here, the various types of private-private joint venture, private-public and private government. A joint ownership venture may be brought in various different forms. It is also a common practice to split the local interest between a partner and various public participations. Such a strategy may enable the international firm to retain much control despite a minority holding, as the power of the remaining shares is spread out among many people. Further, equity holding by the public would help the enterprise get some public support also. Partnership with government organization may help to obtain favorable treatment from the government of that country. In countries where fully foreign owned firms are not allowed or favored, joint venture is the best alternative if the international marketer is interested in establishing an enterprise in the foreign market. Many foreign companies entered the communist, socialist and other developing countries in the form of joint ventures. In some cases, it is also possible to swap the know-how, such as patent rights or equity rights, in forming joint venture as a means of securing ownership in foreign operations. Partnership with local firm has certain specific advantages. The local partner would be in a better position to deal with the government and the publics. Further, there would not be much public hostility when there is a local partner, because there is someone of their own who is representing them. It would be much less when there is an equity holding by the government sector and the public. It should be noted that a light local partner for a joint venture can have a major impact on the firm's competitiveness, because such a partner can serve as a cultural bridge between the manufacturer and the market. For example, several successful foreign affiliated companies have demonstrated how the right partnership can strongly enhance a firm's competitive edge and its ability to adapt to the cope with the Japanese market. The Japanese market has certain cultural bounds, and until and unless you are very much with the people of Japan, you cannot understand those cultures, and accordingly you cannot adapt to that market. Having someone local will help you in a great manner. A joint venture can succeed only if both the partners are having something definite to offer to the advantage of the other, and reap definite advantages and have a mutual trust and respect. For any business to run, mutual trust and respect are of great importance. Our next entry mode is the third country location. The third country location is sometimes used as an entry strategy when there is no commercial transaction between two nations because of the political reason, or when direct transactions between two nations are difficult due to the political reasons, or the like. A firm in one of these nations which wants to enter the other market will have to operate from the third country base. This is the case with India and Pakistan. India in many cases is having a problem to directly deal with Pakistan. So an Indian firm goes via Dubai to work with a Pakistani firm. For example, we have one more example, that is the Taiwanese entrepreneurs found it easy to enter People's Republic of China through the bases in Hong Kong, similar to what Indians found it easy to enter in a Pakistani market through Dubai. The third country location may also be helpful to take advantage of the friendly trade relations between the third country and the foreign market concerned. Thus, for example, Xerox found it convenient to enter the USSR through its Indian joint venture Modi Xerox. There are several cases of countries not having direct commercial transactions. For example, it is true for Israel and Arab countries. They do not have any direct transactions at all. In the past, governments of India did not permit any trade with South Africa and Mauritius even. Sometimes commercial reasons encourage third country locations. For example, several Japanese companies established production facilities in developing countries to circumvent the non-tariff barriers like quotas, voluntarily export restraint and orderly marketing arrangements to import to countries like United States, and also to avail of the preferential treatment accorded by the developed countries to the import from the developing countries. Like India is getting a preferential treatment when they are exporting something to the developed countries, because BRIC countries are mostly the upcoming nations, or we can say the developing countries. Further, third country location may be resorted to reduce cost of production and thereby to increase price competitiveness, to facilitate market entry, or for improving or maintaining the market position. The incentives offered by government, particularly of the developing countries, for investment and export encourage such third country locations. The export processing zones are particularly attractive in this respect. Our next entry mode as a point of our discussion is the mergers and acquisitions. Mergers and acquisitions have a very important market entry strategy as well as expansion strategy. A number of Indian companies have also used this entry strategy in order to enter into other nations. Mergers and acquisitions have certain specific advantages which we should consider. It provides instant access to markets and distribution network. As one of the most difficult areas in international marketing is the distribution. This is often a very important consideration for mergers and acquisitions. Another important objective of mergers and acquisitions is to obtain access to new technology or a patent right. Mergers and acquisitions also has the advantage of reducing the competition. When we were talking about the advantages, as a coin has two sides, even mergers and acquisitions have faced problems as a mode of an entry strategy. Mergers and acquisitions may also give rise to some problems which arise mostly because of the deficiency of the evaluation of the case of acquisitions. Sometimes the cost of acquisition may be unrealistically high. Further, when an enterprise is taken over, all its problems are also acquired with it. The success of the enterprise will naturally depend on the success in solving the problems. For example, if you are acquiring an Indian company which is having huge losses and huge loans, then after an acquisition, all those loans and losses will also be acquired by a foreign firm. The way in which it can solve these problems will only make sure that how much competitive and comparative the foreign firm can prove to an Indian market. Our next discussable strategy is strategic alliance. Strategic alliance has become more and more popular in international business, also known by names such as entity coalition. This strategy seeks to enhance a long-term competitive advantage of the firm by forming alliance with competitors existing or potential in critical areas. Instead of competing with each other, the goal are to leverage critical capabilities, increase the flow of innovation, and increase flexibility in responding to market and technological changes. Strategic alliance is also sometimes used as a market entry strategy. For example, a firm may enter a foreign market by forming an alliance with a firm in the foreign market for marketing or distributing the former's product. A US pharmaceutical firm may use the sales promotion and distribution infrastructure of a Japanese pharmaceutical firm to sell its products in Japan. In return, the Japanese firm can use the same strategy for the sale of its products in US market. That is a to and fro process. Strategic alliance should always be treated more than an entry strategy. It is a competitive strategy. Now we should consider that there are different types of alliance according to the purpose or structure, based on the description of generic forms of coalition by Michael Porter and Mark Fuller. According to the purpose as follows, the alliances are distributed. Technology development alliance like research, simultaneous engineering agreements, licensing or joint venture agreements. The second one is marketing, sales and service alliance, in which a company makes use of the manufacturing infrastructure etc. of another company in the foreign markets for its products. This may help easy penetration of the foreign market and preemption of potential competitors. Multiple activity alliance, which involves the combining of two or more types of alliances, while marketing alliance are often single country alliance, as international firms take on different alliance in each country. Technological development and operational alliance are usually multi-countries, since these kind of activities can be employed over several countries. Multiple activity alliance involves the combining of two or more types of alliances, while marketing alliances are often single country alliance. An international firm take on different alliances in each country. Technological development and operation alliances are usually multi-country, since these kind of activities can be employed over several different nations. Strategic alliance also differ according to how they are structured. Here we should pay an extra attention to strategic alliances. They can be equity based or non-equity based. Non-equity based alliance such as technological transfer agreements, licensing agreements, marketing agreements, etc. are proven to be more dynamic, more constructive and more strategic according to McKinsey. As indicated above, several areas of business from R&D to distribution provide scope of alliances. Whether it is in R&D, manufacturing, marketing or any other objective, an important objective of the collaboration is to maximize marginal contribution to the fixed cost. The last entry strategy that is to be discussed by us for today is counter trade. Although a major reason for the substantial growth of counter trade is its use as a strategy to increase exports, particularly by the developing countries, counter trade has been successfully used by a number of companies as an entry strategy also. For example, PepsiCo gained entry in the USSR by employing this strategy only. Counter trade is a form of international trade in which certain exports and import transactions are directly linked with each other, in which import of goods are paid for by export of goods instead of the money payment. We can even call this an updated barter system. In the modern economies, most transactions involve monetary payments and receipts, either immediate or deferred. As against this, counter trade refers to a variety of unconventional international trade practices which link exchange of goods directly or indirectly in an attempt to dispense with currency transactions. While studying counter trade, one should consider that there are several forms of counter trade. The following are the most common among them. First one is barter. Barter refers to direct exchange of goods of equal value with no money and no third party involved in it. For example, a counter trade deal between the Minerals and Metal Trading Corporation of India and a Yugoslavian company involved import of 50,000 tons of rails of the value of about 38 million by the MMTC and the purchase by the Yugoslavian company of iron ore, concentrates and petals of the same value. The next form of counter trade is buyback. Under the buyback agreement, the supplier of plants, equipments or technologies agrees to purchase goods manufactured with that equipment or technology. Under the buyback scheme, the full payment may be made in kind or a part may be made in kind and the balance in cash. Thus, a rupee 20 crore buyback agreement with the Soviet Union provided for the import of 200 sophisticated looms by the National Textile Corporation. The buyback ratio was of 75%. That is, 25% was paid in cash and the remaining was paid in kind. Compensation deal. Under this agreement, the seller receives a part of the payment in cash and the rest is in products. That is, finished goods. The last form of counter trade is counter purchase. Under the counter purchase agreement, the seller receives the full payment in cash but agrees to spend an equivalent amount of money in that country within a specified period. A classic example of this kind of agreement was Pepsi Cola's trade with USSR. Pepsi-Cola got paid in rubles for the sale of its concentrates in the USSR but spent this amount to purchase of Russian products like vodka and wine. It should be noted that countertrade has been growing with government patronage. It may be noted that the South Commission has advocated countertrade as an useful mechanism for overcoming difficulties of payments, export credits and foreign exchange which might otherwise be a serious obstacle to the expansion of trade between developing countries. Now we should consider that what are the reasons of growth of countertrade. There have been several reasons for the countertrade to become popular. Obviously, the countries or companies concerned have encouraged or involved in countertrade due to certain specific advantages, although some of the benefits may be purely temporary in nature. The first one is countertrade has very common between the communist countries. It also became popular in respect of trade between the communist bloc and many developing countries because these developing countries were eagerly looking towards this bloc of increasing their exports among other things, and this naturally led to the acceptance of the trade practices preferred by the centrally planned economies. Second one, countertrade became popular in East-West trade mainly due to the foreign exchange problem faced by the East Bloc. Pepsi-Cola is just one example of multinational corporation which made considerable international business with the USSR by countertrade. Third one is when the foreign exchange problem became more severe for the developing countries. Following the oil price hikes, they began to actively pursue countertrade in a frantic bid to increase their exports by all means. Many companies in the advanced countries have also resorted to countertrade for various reasons like selling obsolete products, increasing the sale of capital goods, increasing the aggregate business, etc. Countertrade has also become resorted to by several companies to mitigate the effect of recessions, which is a major cause of concern in today's world. Such recessionary situation in the capital good industries in the advanced countries gave the developing countries an opportunity to push their export by tying the imports of capital goods with export by countertrade. The result of the above survey also suggests that countertrade enables firms to penetrate difficult market, to increase sales volume and to achieve fuller capacity utilizations. It has also been revealed that countertrade enables firms to dispose the declining product, which is particularly important given the very rapid pace of technological advancement. Here we can consider an Apple's advantage example that if Apple is unable to sell all its iPhones of S5 series, then who will consider of buying the S6 series phones? Actually no one. A next advantage of countertrade is some countries have also made the countertrade a means to increase sales through disguised undercutting of cartel prices. For example, the oil price fixed by the OPEC nations. Having realized the potential of increasing the business by encouraging in countertrade, many international trading corporations have actively become a member of countertrade business. Their trading with many countries enabled them even to take up such complex transactions as in case of Belmer Brands cited earlier. Now, as we have already seen that there are many reasons for the growth of countertrade. So anything that has many positive side or faces is obviously going to have a darker face below the lamp. So here are the drawbacks that are faced by countertrade in the long run. Although there are several justifications, particularly for the short run, it suffers from a number of disadvantages and problems, particularly in the long term period. Firstly, countertrade encourages bilateralism at the expense of multilateralism. Secondly, it adversely affects export market development. Thirdly, Although several developing countries regard counter-trade as an easy route to export, they often stand to lose in terms of prices. For example, Poland bought Libyan oil at a discount and sold it at a higher price to Rotterdam spot market. Fourthly, it very adversely affects competition. Having a contract between two companies, so that is obviously going to have a negative effect on open competition. So that is all regarding the entry strategies that are followed by different countries. Thank you for the day from Vibhuti Parekh, and thanks for watching Edupedia World videos to all my dear friends.